This week's story reading is called Achrei Mot, which means after the death. We're reminded in the beginning of this portion of the tragic event, the death of Aaron's sons who were burned during the offering, whether due to their carelessness or, according to some commentaries, because they consumed alcohol. The text of our Parshat suggests that such tragedies might occur again, unless the priests take specific steps to prevent them. I was thinking about this Torah portion on my return flight from Israel when I watched the movie The Hate You Give, directed by George Tillman Jr. The movie is about an African-American teenager who was shot by policemen during a routine traffic stop. The story goes on, focusing on a girl, his childhood friend, who was with him in the car, and her struggle to comprehend the injustice that is happening in her small town with a large population of African Americans. As a result of her being in the car at the time of the shooting, she's facing a moral dilemma. She has to decide what to do. If she does the right thing and testifies against the policeman, she will endanger her family. It is complicated because the boy who was shot was involved with the local gang. She could remain silent or choose to fight for justice. As you might guess, the girl chooses to testify and almost dies in the hands of the gangsters. In the process, the family endures frightening challenges from the local police as well as the threats from the King Lord. The movie actually has a somewhat happy ending. The family survives, girl's dad accepts her white boyfriend, the gangster is captured, and the town unites in the fight against injustice. Who could ask for more? But unfortunately, oftentimes the reality of life doesn't include a happy Hollywood-style ending. In the real world, people get shot by policemen who are trained to defend themselves against any sign of potential danger. Sadly, the potential danger they fear may arise during nothing more than a routine traffic stop. And as we all know, gangsters are still in control, profiting from impoverished people. Our society had been torn by extreme violence in both physical and verbal forms. The word hate has become prominent in our vocabulary. You might recall that this is exactly what Fred Hyman, the Holocaust survivor who has spoken at our temple on many occasions, warned against. Fred reminds us that we should not even say, as he calls it, that word out loud. You know, he would spell it rather than say it, H-A-T-E. He tells our children, for example, you may not like broccoli, but you don't H-A-T-E it. In other words, he believes that saying that word in vain acts as a catalyst to bring on the hate. Through the multiple talks he gives at schools, synagogues, and other organizations, he's trying to warn us against the tragedy that may repeat itself, just as the priests in the Torah portion are warned against the repeat of an unnecessary death. Most importantly, they are also instructed what to do to avoid such a tragedy in the future. Friends, we already know what we need to do. We need to continue to fight for or against. We need to continue to fight for the equal rights and opportunities for all, for justice regardless color of faith. We need to fight against gun violence and bigotry, against anti-Semitism and racism. But going to marches and writing to congressmen is not enough. We need to reach out to people, extend our hand. For example, we had held an interfaith Seder on April 6th here at Temple Shalom. We had representatives from various churches who came because they want to learn about us, with us, and from us. Perhaps it was the lack of understanding that drove Robert Gregory Bowers on October 27, 2018, to storm into the Congregation Tree of Life during Shabbat morning service and kill 11 innocent people. He was driven by that word, Hate. But friends, the reaction of the society was the opposite of what the shooter was trying to achieve. Not only the neighborhood, but the whole country and entire world has expressed its support of the congregation in Pittsburgh. In my conversation with Rabbi Myers following the shooting, I asked him, "How do you yourself heal after such an event? How do you help the congregation to heal?" He said to me something that shook me to the core. "You know, I cannot call on any other colleague who has had a similar experience because there is none. I would have talked to the priest of the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, but he was killed too." Unfortunately, Rabbi Myers already had provided the counsel to some of his colleagues in the last couple of years. I only hope that he will not need to provide his expertise to anybody else in the future on how to heal from Achrei Mot, after the death. Rather, we will all continue to share the experience of Kiddushim Tihiyu. You shall be holy, which is the Torah portion of the next week, by spreading kindness and compassion and understanding.